On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we're really having the we weren't ready to go from puck drop talk in game 74 of the season.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we are your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us to recap a bummer of a game against the New Jersey Devils. We'll talk about not being ready for a critical game in game 74 of the season in the thick of a playoff race. We'll also talk about Gustav Nyquist and some concerns about his production level now dropped to the third line for the Minnesota Wild. And we'll talk about the latest with Kirill Kaprizov making the trip. Will we see him on the trip? Will we see him to start the homestand? We'll find out. We'll give you as many updates as we can. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, credentialed member of the media, and joined as always by Alex Micheletti here on a Monday. Unfortunately, no victory for us here for today, Alex. And I find myself going right to the post-game comments from John Hynes in saying that the team wasn't ready to go from the drop. They just were not as dialed in as they needed to be. Players on the team saying that there are pieces of this group that need to, have a bit more of a sense of urgency of where they're at in the situation that they find themselves in, which is in a dead heat with the St. Louis Blues, who have made up 15 points in the standings since the Four Nations face-off break. Let me repeat that again. They've made up 15 points in the standings since the Four Nations face-off, which was basically a month ago. The Wild are in a little bit of a situation here, and I guess I am kind of dumbfounded at the fact that you can be 74 games into the season, and there are still members of this roster who just don't get the situation. They don't get the height of the moment. You are in a push for a playoff spot to try to avoid having to play the Winnipeg Jets in round one. You have a St. Louis Blues team that is playing outrageously good hockey right now.
Just added Jimmy Snuggerud, so
just added some help. We'll talk about that a little bit on the Wild perspective to end the show today, but we shouldn't be having these conversations now. It's one thing. It's one thing. There are a few situations in which we weren't ready to go from the drop is acceptable. It's at least something I'm not going to completely dismiss right offhand.
Right.
First game of the season, first game back from the All-Star break, second game of a back-to-back. Those are the only three instances in which I will even be okay with hearing that argument.
And the Devils were on the back-to-back, and they got shut out the night before against Hellebuck in the Jets. So that makes it even worse that they were on the back end of a back-to-back, and they let a guy get a hat trick on the road too, which that's happened twice now, right? In the past couple of weeks. So that's, you can't have that happen.
And it's not only like they clearly battled back into the game. Like I'm not as like gloom and doom about that game. It was 3-2 until the final couple minutes of the third period. The Wild kept it close despite very clearly getting outplayed. Mm-hmm. It was they were the team that had been rested. But the things that you can't have is what happened to start the game, where you have this hideous line change that leads to a 2-on-1 for the Devils and is about the easiest goal you'll score.
Immediate goal, yeah.
In your life.
You're already playing from behind a minute into the game.
You can't have those types of things. If you are going to be the team that has less skill than your opponent, you have to absolutely lock down the mental aspect. You have to be, and this is why John Hynes preaches this all the time. He's 100% right. You have to own the other side of the game, the details, the crisp passes, the knowing the situation. How many times have we seen the Wild, not only this year, but in previous seasons, get a too many men on the ice penalty because of a weird change? You got 6 players on the ice. Somebody didn't know where they were supposed to be. You can't have those things happen. And not to pick on Brock Faber, but you can't have blind passes to the middle of the ice that are going nowhere, just a hero ball pass that, if not for a tremendous job by both Jared Spurgeon and an equally bad decision by the Devils to thwart their own 3-on-1.
That was crazy.
If not for both of those details, that's probably a goal right there, but it comes out of mistake. You can't be getting lapped in the mental side of things at this point in the season. Like, you have to just be rock solid on what you're doing, and every point at this point in the season matters. And it makes your odds of getting those points so much harder when you put yourself behind 2-0 like 5 minutes into a game.
Yeah, you're chasing it, right, the entire time, and the pressure gets even more. You're gripping your stick even more because you're trying to probably give more effort than what's needed, overdoing it at times, and to have it happen at home too, it makes it even worse because you shouldn't be losing at home. And I mean, look how close it is in the standings. Like you said, the Blues are right there about to pass. And then, I mean, you got Calgary and Vancouver that are hungry to try to make it too. So it's it's going to come right down to the wire. That's for sure. And it's looking more and more like Hellebuck and Winnipeg. So get ready for that.
For once, the Western Conference standings threw the Wild a bone over the weekend by I think it was Vancouver lost. They both have lost 2 in a row. So for once, the schedule's actually throwing you a bone, but not for lack of trying, because the St. Louis Blues have won 9 in a row. They just continue to they were nearly 10 goals in the red in the goal differential. They're now plus 17. So they have found the way to get themselves back on track, largely because Jim Montgomery finally kind of unlocked that team. But you're in a dead heat with them, and you have a game in hand. But again, you can't squander these types of opportunities. And how many times we have seen this so often this season, where you have a game where you rise to the occasion and we're like, oh my gosh, they played so good and they showed the flashes of what they can be. The Washington Capitals are not a bad team. They are one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NHL. And you lock them down defensively, and then you turn around and you just
they look like a complete opposite team of and against a team like we've been pounding it into the sand that not only did they play the night before, they had to fly to Minnesota. So it just you can't have that happen, and you have to take advantage of the schedule when they give you a real good opportunity to get the full 2 points.
You have a stretch in January where you beat the Washington Capitals 4-3 in a shootout. Mm-hmm. And then at the time, I know Carolina has they've been so since, but that was one of the best wins of the season on the road where you shut them down. You beat St. Louis, and then you turn around and you get just throttled by the Colorado Avalanche. You beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. Think about how much we heard about the team stepping up to the occasion to win that game for Marc-Andre Fleury. And then you have, you get just destroyed by the Los Angeles Kings a couple nights later. And then you have the overtime loss to Chicago on the road. Like the effort level has been
against non-playoff teams. That's been the most eye-opening, frustrating thing is losing to the teams that some of them, frankly, aren't trying to win. They're getting ready for the first round of the NHL draft already. But that's kind of frightening. And playing like this, if they are to make the playoffs, that gives you a frightening that it could be a quick 4-game sweep. If that type of effort, against the Devils the first time is happening.
Because it's all about the postseason is all about teams capitalizing on mistakes.
Yes.
So you have a bad change 30 seconds into the game, you give up a goal. That is going to happen against a team like Winnipeg. Matt Boldy gets called for a slashing penalty in the offensive zone.
Immediate goal given up.
Immediate goal given up on the power play. I don't have to hash it out. We've seen it the last 2 years. The last 2 times the Wild made the playoffs against St. Louis and Dallas, they rested on their laurels and they said, hey, this might be a little easier than we thought it was. And the opposing coach makes a bunch of tweaks. Craig Berube, I don't know if he actually did this, but I'm choosing to believe it, took his lineup card and he lit it on fire in front of the team in the locker room and said, we're going back to square one. We're going to win this series. This is this final 10 games, now 8, is do or die. Thankfully, because of Calgary and Vancouver kind of rocking the boat a little bit, you're in pretty, at least right now, you have a 6-point lead over Vancouver with 8 games to play. But think about this too. If not for the fact that Vancouver and Calgary have basically played 500 hockey since the Four Nations face-off break, think about if one of them, and not even the same run that St. Louis is on, but even slightly below that, you might be outside looking in right now.
Right. And, they can't, there's still so much unknown about Ek and Kaprizov. And even if they do come back, are they going to be 100%? I don't see that. So it's, it's going to be interesting to see how, they get it all squared back into the lineup. And, it's, the most unfortunate thing right now is, it seems like, we're not going to see a whole lot of Marc-Andre Fleury. And, if this is, it's right at the end, and, if they do make the playoffs, I don't see him playing in the playoffs. So enjoy the last couple moments I hope Fleury gets a couple more starts to his career.
Yeah. You've got one more back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the one that'll probably decide the season is April 11th and 12th at Calgary and at Vancouver.
Right there. Yeah, that is.
Circle that one. But beyond that, here's the other thing. So he hasn't played since the Vegas game. So you're going to have to get him into a game before that back-to-back. So do you start him on like the 9th against San Jose at home?
An easy one. Oh, in theory.
Well, yeah.
The way the team's been playing at home, I guess it's not. You can't say it's an easy one anymore.
That's an interesting question to ponder, but I would imagine he probably gets that San Jose game, and maybe then he gets the Calgary game. I don't know. There are a lot more questions than that need to be answered, such as anybody seen Gustav Nyquist lately? We'll give you the actual numbers and a couple of interesting quotes from Michael Russo's latest in The Athletic talking about some concerning signs that the Minnesota Wild just completely overlooked in bringing Nyquist back. You're going to want to stick around for that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is down to the Final Four, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. This year's tournament is all chalk on the Final Four with all the number one seeds advancing. Who would have seen that coming? But there still are some compelling storylines in the final 2 games before we get to the championship. So whether you like Auburn or Florida or Duke or Houston, there are some compelling picks to be made, and just one $5 bet, if it wins, gets you $200 in bonus bets to use for the Major League Baseball season, the Stanley Cup playoffs, whatever you want. It's yours. So visit FanDuel.com right now and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. This episode will be released while the Devils game is going on. Had an appointment pop up today that was unexpected that I had to take care of. But we're getting in an episode for you still. We will have a postcast tonight depending on how things go in this game. We'll see, but we will have a postcast for you after the game as well. And Denny is ready to go for his latest live show coming up tomorrow at 8 p.m. Make sure to check the community tab. We've got a couple of polls that are up, and your feedback is welcome. So check that all out, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 8. We'll have an episode for you tomorrow as well. Probably going to dive into the Marco Rossi contract stuff for tomorrow's episode. We did I was actually really happy with how the Philip Gustafson contract episode went. So if you missed it, make sure to check it out. We'll go with the similar format for a potential Rossi extension. We'll probably do one for Kirill as well. But that's all coming up here. Right now, task at hand is finding Gustav Nyquist. Alex, let me read this from Michael Russo. This paragraph on Gustav Nyquist. The Wild got a head start on the trade deadline by trading a 2026 second-round pick to the Nashville Predators for veteran Gus Nyquist. It was a decent bet because Nyquist was good in his short stint with the Wild in 2023. He scored 75 points last season and is known to be a smart, skillful, and fast player. But the Wild were also discounting the fact that the 35-year-old looked like he had lost a step this season in Nashville and was in the middle of a miserable campaign. Well, nothing has changed in Minnesota. In 14 games back with the Wild, he has no goals on 19 shots and 3 assists. He has just 9 goals this season, 4 into an empty net, and 1 5-on-5 goal since October 28th. He has no goals since January 25th. He has played wing on the first, second, and third lines and has yet to create offensive chemistry with any line mates. And look at the statistics even further. So with Nashville this year, Nyquist's Corsi for percentage, which again, it's basically the amount of time that you possess the puck when you're out on the ice. Above 50% is good. Nyquist was at 57.4% in Nashville, which was just below his number last year in his career season with the Predators. Right now with the Minnesota Wild, it's at 44.8. So sizable dip in terms of puck possession. Offensive zone starts, another one that is a nice indicator of, are you setting players up to succeed in the offensive zone? 59.7% of the time in Nashville, Nyquist was playing in the offensive zone. 40.3 with the Minnesota Wild. So, the other numbers speak for themselves. The 19 shots on goal in 14 games, you brought him in to be like let's help out the top 6. But I think that sentence is so like eye-opening that, Bill Guerin made this move knowing full well that he's not getting the same guy that Nyquist was last year. He's not getting the same guy that he was when he was acquired by the Wild 2 seasons ago. He's getting a 35-year-old that is showing obvious signs of decline, and he was willing to give up a second-round pick to do it.
Yeah, I don't know what what pro scout said that was a good idea. It just it makes no sense, and just the minus numbers stood out even on a bad team. Like you just it's unfortunate to give up that high of a pick, on a just because they've valued picks for the past couple of years here, and then to give up a guy that you probably aren't going to re-sign, right? I don't see, especially the way. Well, we can't count out anything because I guess you say that about Marcus Johansson, and who knows, God knows, he might be back.
And it's not only that. I mean, like, look at the Justin Brazeau numbers too.
Mm-hmm. That one made no sense.
He has in 12 games with the Minnesota Wild, he's got the 1 goal. He has 8 shots on goal. He went from playing 13 minutes a night roughly for Boston to 8 minutes and 50 seconds with the Wild. His Corsi numbers have taken even more of a substantial dip. 52.3% Corsi for percentage with Boston. 39.2 with the Minnesota Wild. Offensive zone starts, 53.1 for the Bruins, 40.9 for the Minnesota Wild. And like, he was brought in to provide size and provide net front presence. I've seen a few shots from up in close that have either been chipped up over the net, wide left, wide right. I just, like, it. People wonder, why I was so critical of the approach at the trade deadline. You pay a higher price, you get a more guaranteed product in return. I wasn't comfortable paying what the Avalanche paid to acquire Brock Nelson. That was an insane overpay. Right. But there were other players that were available that could have provided something that you needed, as opposed to a couple of guys that just fit in the same category that we have been critical of the last couple of years, which is players that are clearly on the decline, players that are losing speed before our eyes, and players that don't consistently finish.
Right. And, size does he no good if he can't skate either, right? And remember when he got acquired, there was talk that maybe he'd be on the power play, Brazeau. No. And so, just, it's very frustrating to see all the other, the teams that are in the top 30 right now. They all made moves that have been extremely helpful. They, of course, they had more cap space, but they at least made moves that have made an impact. The moves the Wild have made have at points made the team worse.
Yep. It's I keep saying it, we're going to come right down to the wire again this season, but at least Kirill Kaprizov is on the trip, setting up a checkup with his surgeon in New York. We'll just explain what is all going on with the Kirill Kaprizov situation to finish out the show. We'll also talk a little bit about Joel Eriksson, who is also with the team, but he has a timetable. It's just not anytime soon. So we'll talk about all that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to join us after the game for a postcast with some post-game reaction to the game against the Devils here tonight, which is on NHL Network. So good luck. Good luck finding it. I don't know if I even have NHL Network. I'm going to have to check. But Let's talk a little bit about the Kirill Kaprizov timeline to finish things off, Alex. Obviously, Kaprizov and Eriksson both with the Wild on the trip. John Hynes pretty vocal that they're not likely to play in any of these 3 games. Kirill is going to see his surgeon to, I'm assuming, get final clearance and final okay to ramp up, just to make sure that everything is kosher and good, which is great. I'm glad that they're at that point. But I'm going to take this in a different direction because of what we saw happen to Joel Eriksson against Dallas. And the concerns for Joel Eriksson should be similar because it's a similar type of injury. You can practice in a controlled setting as much as you want. Game settings are completely different, and game settings lead to what ended up being the initial injury for Kirill Kaprizov, which was an awkward play in which he got landed on by Giraffe on skates Logan Stanley. That's not something you do at practice. That's an uncontrolled, awkward maneuver that happens in a game setting when the action is going on and you have to make split-second decisions to avoid a hit, to move one way awkwardly that a muscle is not necessarily supposed to move. And it's the same thing with Joel Eriksson. He ramped up all that time before the series against Dallas to get himself in position because it was a controlled environment in which he could get some skating and conditioning in. But the moment there was an awkward movement that was not something that could be simulated in practice, that was it. That was done. So these guys can practice as much as they want, but the only indicator as to if they're ready or not is real games. And we are running out of time for real games. After this road trip is done, there are 5 games left in the regular season.
Right. I mean, there's always been talk of the runway. I mean, there is no runway now. If it the closer, and it's just ticking and ticking and ticking, and so yeah, that makes things so much difficult because you can't even replicate what playoff hockey is going to be like.
Yep.
I mean, the conditioning is the most scary thing about them coming back. Is, are they even going to be in shape to play?
Yeah, let's think about when Kaprizov was initially injured. He missed 25 games, came back with a couple games left to go in that season to get himself in playoff shape, and did not look anywhere near what we have known him to be with dealing with that injury. And if you are Kirill Kaprizov operating at 55 to 60%, now, based off of some of the players that are in this lineup, that may still be sizable, but you only then have to divert regular amounts of attention to keep an eye on him, as opposed to 2 defensemen and a forward that maybe have to keep an eye on him at all times. And while you want to have him into decoy, it ends up being that teams are like, yeah, he's not where he has been. So we don't have to really throw a ton at him to keep him quiet. Yeah.
So it's it takes strategy out of things for sure for the Wild, and when to get guys out on the ice, and if it is Winnipeg, I mean, they're most likely gonna at some point could you imagine if they have Logan Stanley in the lineup, because they have some question marks on the back end for the defense there, so he would be ready to try to pound on Kaprizov, with him in the lineup. And they have Luke Shen now, and so that's another guy that just likes to cause chaos on the back end. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And if it's a broken bone type of situation for Eck again, like you mentioned in this episode, one wrong turn and it can end the entire series.
Yeah. It doesn't take more than an awkward movement, and there are plenty of them that happen during the course of a game. That can. Sorry, I just about had a mini panic attack as the Wild announced the starting lineup tonight, and it looked like Marco Rossi was playing a wing position with Marcus Foligno as a center, but that cannot be right.
No.
That's just how the graphic is unleashed. Anyway, we'll, as we mentioned, we'll have a postcast for you tonight after the game. But the final thing that I wanted to end on is, as we continue to watch the NCAA tournaments, how about Zeev Buium?
That was incredible last night, watching that game. And, Boston College, they were really trying to take him out. And, he got a knee-on-knee hit, and he got speared at one point. And so they were really giving it to him. And for him to ice the game, he gets the empty netter, and then goes by his teammates on the bench, and then gives BC the salute and the 2 fingers, see you later. You love to see that. He plays with an edge, and he wants to win, back-to-back national titles. Same thing with Regal Lorenz. He's looked great this season too, and Denver just they just roll. They sometimes come in quietly to this tournament, and once they get in there, David Carl, he gets his team ready, and it should be an awesome Frozen Four, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Zeev's got an edge to him that I like.
Yeah,
he is not afraid to,
and he really
mix it up.
Yeah, he wants to show the 11 GMs that passed on him that, hey, you made a giant mistake. I'm the steal of the draft. So, it's fun to see his game continue to grow. And, if you compare him and Faber, it seems like he has a little bit more offense to give than Faber. So that, that's encouraging too. And, hopefully they will allow him to come into the lineup, if they do make the playoffs, and they could definitely use him on the power play, because we've seen at times where the power play just they don't even sometimes get shots off.
Yeah, they routinely don't.
I mean, that's a guy that hey, I know Bogo and Merrill at times been playing decently. You can afford to at least get Zeev in there, and you can shelter his minutes and let him go to work on the power play. I think that would just give this team so much more juice.
Yeah, well, and as much as Merrill and Bogosian have been steady presences on the third pairing, they don't give you anything offensively. And right. Zeev would give you a tremendous upside on offense that this team, I mean, at this point, with how much of a struggle it's been to score, you got to look at every possibility. I mean, If you have a 1 or 2 goal lead, let Gustafsson let that thing rip from the crease. I'm anything that you can do in order to score goals is exactly what you need to do.
100%.
Now, the Minnesota Wilds, so far against the Devils, much better start. They have had a big needed push. The urgency looks to be there. So props to the Minnesota Wild for that. But again, as we said at the beginning of the show, it's game 74 of the season. Like we shouldn't need to say, and players shouldn't need to hear, hey, this game is important. Like you should know at this point in the season that it's important and should play accordingly. But
yeah, this team, they just always can surprise us, right? And to hear those words that they weren't ready to go in game 74, that is definitely a new one. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that whatsoever, but we'll keep an eye on how the rest of this game plays out. Appreciate everybody for tuning in while the game is in progress. We will have a postcast for you tonight, so make sure to join us after the game. Make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We have them for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.